Okay, go for it.
All right. Hey, guys. So I am Ryan Tanner. I recruited you all got here. So we have an agency, Zoe, Abbott, and myself. Zoe runs a huge life insurance agency. She's branched out to start Medicare as well, and she put me in charge of that. So I've recruited all you guys, and we're busy recruiting a huge, awesome team, and we're putting together very great training for you guys. Zoe and I are very big on training and making sure you know exactly what to do, how to do it, so you can be successful agents, because we have a really good system with Legacy Benefits Alliance. Carl Judd is the training officer for Legacy Benefits Alliance. He is very experienced, knows I would say pretty much all you need to know to be successful in Medicare. So this is a great opportunity that he's given us to do this training with our team. Personal, it's a lot more personal than his other trainings. So it'll give us the opportunity to do questions and answers and get things that you need sorted out so you can be successful. Over to you, Carl.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Well, here we go. Welcome, everybody. Let's see. It looks like I've got quite a few people here, and at the moment, I don't have anybody pending coming in. So if they haven't gone in by now, they're running a little bit late. Hopefully, I will see them when they get there. If not, then they can watch the recording. But my plan for you guys today is to do what I call my 4-page sales system. If you've been joining the weekly calls, the last two that I have done have been pages 1 and 2. And in my opinion, the pages 1 and 2 is kind of the majority of what you need to be able to really sit down with a client and get the information you need to move forward with a client and find the right plan. Now, what I will say is this: in the 4 pages that I teach, those 4 pages can be done realistically without having a scope of appointment done. It is all built on an educational side of Medicare, right? So when we talk about the different pathways, when we talk about meeting the needs, when we talk about how the drug coverage is laid out, all those things are not plan specific information. If I start talking about what an exact copay is for a Humana or United, or if I start mentioning those specific benefit offerings from any plan, I have to have a scope in place. But everything on the first 4 pages that I teach you, which really can be done in just a few minutes, is built to help you and the client be on the same page when you start going into, this is the plan that I recommend for you. Okay, so I just want to let you guys know what the idea and the thought behind these 4 pages are, so you can use them to your advantage. Okay, so let me open this up here. We've got page 1. What we're going to do today, we're not going to do like we did with the regular training this week. Matter of fact, who can I see here? That's would be a good, who wants to volunteer to be my patient? Roberto, you want to be my client today?
Absolutely.
Right. So I think you were on the training last week. I think I remember seeing you there.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to do the same thing, right? You don't have to fluff anything. You can tell me realistically what's going on with you, right? If you feel like there's something that would help enhance the group, feel free, right? But we'd like to do this as if it's just me as the agent and you and the client, okay? So let's go right here. So Roberto, I'm assuming since you reached out to me that you're just joining Medicare, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, So has anybody ever sat down with you and explained how Medicare works overall?
No, not really.
Okay. So my job today is to make that simple for you. I want to show you a couple different pathways and how overall Medicare is not really the best choice. However, there's ways to kind of fix the problems inside of Medicare. And then what we'll do from there is kind of dive down into what your personal situation looks like. And we'll talk a little bit about drug coverage, whether you need it or not, and how it operates within Medicare specifically. And then what we'll probably do is take a look at some of the plans that might benefit you based on how the rest of that conversation goes. Okay. So first, let's look at what original Medicare covers as far as the red, white, and blue card that you have, right? So you have Medicare Part A. You look on your card, it says hospital. However, that's a little bit inaccurate. Part A is anything that's really overnight services. So it does cover hospitalization. It also covers things like skilled nursing, hospice care. I'd like to say anything that is an overnight service is covered by Part A. If you go to it and you're not coming home, it's most likely going to be a Part A service. Now, Part B is kind of the opposite. It's same day services. These are things like doctor visits, x-rays, MRIs, anything that you go to and come home from on the same day is most likely covered by Part B. Does that make sense so far?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So let me talk about some of the gaps inside of original Medicare. And I've got the sheet here. You can see my sheet, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And these numbers are slightly off because I used some data from late last year. Very, very small differences though. So the overall concept will be the same. So Part A, if you were to go into the hospital, the very first overnight that you have is going to cost you $1,556. That's your deductible. Okay. Now, what's nice or not nice, depending on how you want to look at it, is once you've paid that deductible, it does cover the first 60 days. So you have 2 months in the hospital that's covered by that $1,556. If you have to stay in the hospital longer than that, that's when the prices for original Medicare really get out of control. Days 61 through 90, every day you're in the hospital is going to cost you $389. If you're in the hospital longer than that, from days 91 to 159, I think that's 151, but yeah, that number's wrong.
Wow.
Excuse me, 150. It would be $778 each day. And then anything over that 6-month mark, that 151st day, Medicare doesn't pay anything for your stay. The whole bill goes to you. So if you recognize that the hospital stay per day is like $4,000 to $10,000, depending on where you're at, that's a lot of gap that's not covered by original Medicare, right?
Right.
Now, Part B is not as bad, but it can be, right? So with Part B, you start out paying the first $233. And then once that's satisfied, you pay 20% of everything else for those same day services. So here's a couple of examples of that. If you went to a doctor and the doctor charged you $100, you'd pay for the first 2 for sure, right? And then you pay the first 33 to the third visit. And then it's only a $20 bill going forward. So that in that scenario, a doctor visit specifically that only charged $100 is not too bad. But if you had, let's say, a couple doctor visits and then you went to have a CT scan or a PET scan, which is thousands of dollars, then you're paying 20% of those thousands of dollars. So that can be very expensive too. And also with Part B, there is no stop. There is no what I like to call safety net. The money that you pay, that 20%, will happen all the way until the end of the year. So you can see Part A and Part B has some pretty big gaps in it as far as coverage. And so what we have up here is we have two different ways that you can kind of fix the solution, right? Or fix the problem. One way to do that is, and I've kind of made this, it's visually appealing. You can kind of pick a path, right? You can go down. Now, if you go down, what you're doing is you're buying a Medicare supplement. You've probably heard those as Medigap policies or Medicare supplements. The goal of a Medicare supplement is to get rid of the costs that we just talked about below, right? The deductibles, the co-insurances. Now, currently, the best supplement for anybody new to Medicare that they can get will cover everything except for this Part B deductible here. Okay, it's at $233. That's the only thing that the new supplements won't cover. But what you can do is you can get a supplement for about $200 a month, give or take, right? Prices will vary. And it'll take away all that Part A deductible, the co-insurances, etc. And it'll cover all the medical side. Now, the only thing that won't cover, because Medicare supplements cover the medical side of things, is drugs. So your prescription drugs will have to have its own plan. It'll be a Part D plan. And you can get one of those on average for about $50 a month. And we'll talk more about how drug coverage works, bigger picture in a second. But I guess what I want you to understand is in this first pathway, you have a Medicare supplement, you get drug coverage for about $3,000 a year, 200 plus 50 times 12. And then the only thing that you have to pay out of pocket is going to be your Part B deductible, that $233, and then whatever co-pays that you have when you go to the pharmacy. Everything else is taken care of. Okay. The other pathway that you can look at is through Medicare Advantage. Now, Medicare Advantage, instead of having original Medicare card with Part A and Part B, another card for filling the gaps, and another card for your drug coverage, what Medicare Advantage does is it combines all of your coverage into one card. Okay, one company will manage everything, and so it takes your Part A, your overnight services, your Part B, your medical services, stuff. It adds drug coverage to it, and it also adds other benefits. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But it takes it into that one plan that's managed through a private insurance company. Now, that could be like a Humana or United or Aetna or whoever. And you probably have seen commercials for it. But they have all that coverage under one plan, and you get to choose what kind of plan you want, right? So you have the option to either choose an HMO or a PPO. Are you familiar with the differences between the two, Roberto?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Okay, now I'm going to take a little asterisk here and just say, he said, yes, I understand the difference. Okay, that doesn't change my script at all. I'm saying the exact same thing. So I'm going to asterisk myself for a second. Okay, so great, Roberto. So you understand that an HMO is network-based, which means that doctors and hospitals, specialists, pharmacies, anything that you do has to be contracted with the company that you join, right? Whereas a PPO, you have doctors and hospitals and specialists and pharmacies that are contracted, but if you need to, you can go outside of that network. Is that how you understand HMOs and PPOs?
Yeah, because I had
Yes.
previous employer coverage, and it's a PPO, and I
Okay.
don't want to get referrals. That's a nightmare for me.
Gotcha. Okay. So let me, and I really like to have this in person, but since we're over the computer here, I'm just going to tell you one of the examples that I could use with you. So if I went to see a specialist inside of an HMO, it's probably going to be the lowest cost way for me to do that. I might spend a copay of something like $20, $25, right? So I would normally just go ahead and write 25 with that specialist, but I'd put it inside the box because it's my only option. They have to be in network, right? But on a PPO, I would do the same thing. If I went to the exact same specialist, even with the exact same company, but it was the PPO version of that plan, I'm going to pay a little bit more, even in network, but I'm also going to have the option to go out of network. So on the PPO for that same specialist, if they're contracted, my copay might be $40 or $50 if they're in network, if they're contracted. But if they're not contracted, I can still see them, but my cost is going to be a little bit higher, the out of network price. So I might pay like $50, $60, $70 for that visit instead of that 40 or 50. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I like people to understand that HMO is going to be network restricted, but lower in cost, and PPO is going to be a little less restrictive, but a little bit higher in copays. And then, on the other side, if we went down that first pathway going down, it's all prepaid, right? So that's the overall pathways that you can go through with original Medicare. You have a pay in advance, which is Medicare supplement, and then you have pay as you go with Medicare Advantage. Does that all make sense for you right now, Roberto?
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now, can you see this page?
Yes.
Has your page changed? Okay, great. So, so let's talk about what your specific usage looks like. That way it'll give me an idea of who you see as for doctors, and then how to best kind of drive into one of the types of plans that we just talked about. Okay. So first of all, do you have a primary care physician?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay. Who is that?
Dr. Christina Agustinelli.
Agustinelli? Okay.
Agostinelli.
For sake of time, I'm going to move forward.
Yeah.
But I would definitely want to write that one down, right? Okay, great. How long have you been seeing your primary doctor?
Couple of years.
Couple years. Okay, so you have a pretty well-established relationship. It's not like you just started.
I'm pretty healthy. I only go, every 6 months, twice a year.
Okay,
for my checkup.
Great. What about specialists? Do you have any specialists you currently see?
No. So far, urologist, I've only seen twice, just for normal prostate checkup.
Okay. Any other specialists, cardiologist?
No, not at all.
Neurology, none of that stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. So what I like to do here and you'll see it on the top there, it says page 2. What I like to do here is kind of get an idea of what your usage would look like between each of the different pathways, right? So HMO and PPO, what it would look like, and then if we just did a Medicare supplement. So let's start with Medicare supplement, right? Medicare supplement, we're prepaying for all the cost, right? So with Medicare supplement, we can pretty much say that we're going to put you at $3,000 for the year, right? At 200 plus 50, 12 months a year, you've prepaid $3,000 for the year, right? Now, the only other cost that we have, and I think we'll probably find that 233, that Part B deductible, is probably going to fall within that $3,000 for the year. So I'm just going to make it easy and say, let's say $3,000 for the year for Medicare supplement. And it doesn't matter what the usage is. You can go to your doctor no times, or you can go to them 100 times. It's not going to matter.
Yeah.
Okay. But now let's look at what it would look like if you went to either an HMO or a PPO. Okay. So with your primary, you said you see it a couple times a year. Would it be fair if I said 5 times a year is pretty close to accurate?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So the reason I use 5, I like to explain why I use numbers, right? So 5 visits would represent once per quarter, which is what the doctors usually like to see. And then another visit just in case you catch something like COVID or the flu or what have you. Okay, so that's why I'm going to use 5 visits. All right. Now, if we did 5 visits on an HMO, an HMO is a preventative plan, which means that this plan is built to try to make it easy for you to have access to your primary doctor and to get preventative services done at very low, if any, cost. And the overall goal of it is to keep you out of the hospital, right? To keep you healthy. So on the primary doctor, most plans are not going to charge you anything to join their plan. Okay. So those 5 visits have no cost. Now, in a PPO is not necessarily a preventative plan. PPO is kind of more of an expansive plan that gives you access to more doctors. And the concept behind that one is that you're probably going to need a little bit more enhanced care. So it's not built to be preventative. So you won't realize as much as the discount on seeing some of the doctors as you would on an HMO. But on PPO, it's still not very bad when it comes to the cost structure. So for example, if we took those same 5 visits for your primary care, you're only going to pay $10 or $20 for those visits. It'll have some cost, but not very much cost. And that's if it's anything. Some PPOs don't even charge a visit fee for your primary care, but I'm going to try to give you a worst case scenario here to give you a fair assessment of the 3 different pathways. Okay, so let's assume that it costs $20 per visit, and we did the same 5 visits. That is going to cost $100 for the year for those 5 visits on a PPO, right? So far what we have here is we've got primary care. If we went through an HMO, it's not going to cost anything. A PPO would be $100, and a Medicare supplement is already prepaid for that annual total of $3,000, right? Now you said you only see a urologist, and it's really just for checkups, right?
Yeah.
What I'd like to do, Roberto, if it's okay with you, is I would like to show you what the national average is. The average senior sees 2 specialists every quarter. And it would really just give you a better idea in case your situation changes, if you had to pick up another doctor or 2 to give you a fair comparison between the different types of plans. So would it be okay if I showed you that instead of what your personal is?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. And I'd like to do that too, because, right now you're pretty healthy, but, things changed a little bit.
Yep.
And you need to, see more doctors. I'd rather show you what it really looks like than, hey, I'm super healthy right now and I'm not paying hardly anything. What happens when I have 5 doctors, right? So let's go ahead and assume that the average is where you're at. That would be 2 specialists every quarter, which totals 8 visits for the year. Okay. Now, again, with the Medicare supplement, those 8 visits have already been paid for once you pay that $233 deductible by that $3,000 annual cost. Now, an HMO, in general, like we said when we were working with page 1, it's going to be $20, $25, maybe $30 for the visit. So we'll use round numbers here to make it easy for my brain for math. Let's just call it $25. And if you did 8 visits of that, that's $200 for the year. Okay. Now, PPO is slightly more expensive. And again, kind of keeping with the example I used in page 1, if I assign $50 for that visit, then you're looking at about $400 for the year, right? So on the specialist side, HMOs about $200 for the year, PPO about $400 per year, supplements, it's already been prepaid because we spent that $3,000 upfront. Now, Roberto, have you been in the hospital in the last couple of years, or do you foresee yourself having any issues that give you a high risk to go into the hospital?
Not so far.
Okay.
Been very lucky.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear that. But what I'd like to do again, just for cost comparison, is I would like to show you what a day in the hospital would look like. Okay. That way there's no surprises on whatever plan we decide to pick with for you today. So on an HMO, I would say average cost is somewhere, we'll probably go on the high side and say $200 per day. Now there will be on most plans that are in the Medicare Advantage side, there will be a stopgap, right? So even though there will be a copay of like $200 or $300, $400 per day, there will also be a limit to how much that specific benefit will have risk for you. Okay, so let's say on an HMO, it's $200 for that day in the hospital. We bounce over to the PPO, it's something like $300 per day. But each of those will cap out somewhere around $2,000. That's just how the Medicare Advantage plans work. Generally, they try to keep the maximum for your hospital stay somewhere close to what that deductible for Part A is. Might be a little bit higher, but generally in that ballpark. Okay. So last thing that I'm going to kind of dive into as far as what your personal usage is, because I think this will cover most anything, is do you have any upcoming surgeries?
No.
No. Okay. So since you don't have anything there, we've already kind of dialed in and put a day in the hospital for cost. I'm just going to not use that, but we could always account for that in the future if we needed to. But just to give you an idea, about $150 or $200 per HMO or PPO. And sometimes it's even lower than that. So it's not a huge cost. But if you had a plan or if you had a situation where you knew that was coming, we would talk about that, right? And adjust our numbers accordingly. So when we look at overall cost for HMO, primary care for the year had no cost. Specialist was $200. And then the day in the hospital, that gives us a total under HMO of $350 for the year. Okay. And again, this usage is not as much as what you actually use because you don't really see any specialists. You're not anticipating to have a day in the hospital. So far we're doing even better than that. Okay. If we looked at PPO for you, we're looking at for, let's see, primary care is 100, right? That's 5 visits at $20. Specialist visit should be about 400 for the year. So we're at 500 now. And then let's say 200 for a day in the hospital. I'm sorry, 300 for a day in the hospital. So that's 700 for the year. Where a Medicare supplement, you would have spent $3,000 in advance, right? So you see why we're kind of looking at the financial side of this, and we can see that, you know, your HMO or PPO option is probably going to fare out much better than the Medicare supplement by like a third of the cost or better. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So let's keep going. We have page 3 here, and page 3 goes into what it looks over for long term, right? Let's take a scenario of 5 years, but inside of that 5 years, my first 3 years are great. I don't have any issues. So on the HMO, I'm 350 and 350 and 350. And I'm having great years, seeing the doctors when I want to, saving a lot of money by not getting into a plan that costs too much, right? But on my 4th year, I have a catastrophic year. I have a heart attack. While I'm having a heart attack, I fall down a flight of stairs and break my leg. And that's after I come out of a coma for a couple months, right? So I've got a ton of hospitalization. I've got some time I've got to do therapy in the hospital. And then outside of the hospital, I've got a whole bunch of specialists that have been picked up because, you know, I've had this major incident. And so my usage is going to go up as well. So on years 1, 2, and 3, we stay at that 350. And then year 4, we have that catastrophic year. What's nice about HMO and PPO plans is they have this benefit called a maximum out of pocket. Okay. So maximum out of pocket is the dollar limit that you could pay inside of a plan, but up to that point, anything after that point, the plan will pay 100%. So let's say that it's $6,700 for a maximum out of pocket. I will tell you from my experience, that's a very high number, but I have seen that number. So I'm going to give you on the high side just to give you a good comparison. And then what I'm also going to do on that 5th year is, since you had all these issues on the 4th year, we probably have a couple of doctors that we kind of see. And so that 350 might take care of it. But I wanted, for one more year, I want to kind of show more copays, because you might have to have a follow-up, an extra this and that. So I'm going to double your average usage, which in our $350 case, that's actually double the national average. So that would give you 16 doctor visits, a couple days in the hospital, just some things to kind of make sure that we're good. And so we'll put that year at 700. Okay. So I don't have my calculator in front of me, but let me open it up so I have good numbers for you. Okay. So based on that, if I did 350 times 3, that's 1,050 for those first 3 years. And then I add $6,700 to that for the maximum out of pocket. That's $7,750. And then another 700. Oops. That's a total out of 5 years of $8,450. Does that make sense so far? And this is really much better done in person, guys. But have I lost you that, Roberto?
No, I'm with you.
Okay, so in 5 years, $8,450 for an HMO, right? I'll try to do this a little quicker for you guys. We did the same exact scenario with PPO. We'll do 700 times 3, which is the 2,100. And then you're doing another 6,700 on top of that. Which puts my 5-year total at 9,500. Okay, so I got 8,450, got 9,500 for PPO, and then supplements are very easy, right? That's just 5 years at 3,000, so it's 15,000. So far, 8,450, 9,500, and 15,000. What's nice is, in my experience, even if you have that catastrophic year, you're probably not going to have multiple of those in 10 years, right? So even if I kept down that same path, if I did another 5 years at $350 per year with the HMO, then I'm only adding another $1,750 to that. So my realistic total is just over 10,000. So I'm going to put 10,500 for HMO. Now my PPO, my annual total on average is 700. So if I did that for another 5 years, I'm adding another 3,500. That would put me right about 14,000. Let's put it 14.5 just to give you a little bit of overage. And then with the Medicare supplements, you're 10 years at 3,000, you're already at 30,000, right? So that's a big gap in my opinion. You've got 10,500 for an HMO, approximately. You've got about 15,000 for PPO, and you've got Medicare supplements at $30,000 over a 10-year span. And that includes having some catastrophic time in there and using the maximum benefit of plans. So far what I see with your personal situation, Roberto, is that you might be better off looking at HMOs and PPOs instead of Medicare supplements. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we've already identified your primary care physician, right?
Yep.
We talked about your specialist. By the way, that urologist, what is their name?
It's Premoli, Premoli.
Okay,
First
I
name is
might
Juan.
ask you. I might ask you that in a second. Okay, but
Yeah.
let's go ahead and go forward here. Are you taking any prescriptions currently?
Just one for triglycerides, simvastatin, 20 milligrams.
So, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and write that down. 20 milligrams of whatever you just said. Well, perfect. So what we're going to do right now, and by the way, who prescribed that to you? Was that your primary care
The
physician?
primary, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and jump into page 4. Okay. Can you guys see my page 4? Or are you still seeing page
Yep.
2 and 3?
No, we got 4.
Okay. So page 4 is, for some people, a nightmare, Roberto. Nobody likes to describe the coverage for how Medicare makes these companies work with drugs. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to go over this with you. It is pretty complicated. So if you have any questions, please just stop me. But the way that I'm going to explain drug coverage, it applies to every single opportunity that I've told you to be able to get drugs. So it doesn't matter if it's by itself. It doesn't matter if it's within a Medicare Advantage. This is the Medicare system for how drug coverage is required to be done through Medicare companies. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So here's how it starts. You start out on January 1. So my black line here is going to represent where the 2 different areas are. It's going to represent January 1st. Okay. Or your first time that you get onto a Medicare plan. So like if we decide that this is February, if your Medicare starts March 1st, the first year, or this March, if we get you signed into a plan, all this will start March 1st. And then next year, it will start January 1st. And every year following, it'll start January 1st. Okay. But when you first start a Medicare plan, not change from plan to plan, but when you first get into a Medicare plan, it'll start that first of the month, right? So what happens in this first stage? It's called the initial coverage stage, right? You'll have deductibles. You'll have specific set dollar amount copays. And what will happen is you'll stay in this area until your total drug usage is 4,660. Now, here's where things get confusing, is the total cost is not what you're going to pay. You're going to have set copays, right? So if you had no insurance and you went to the pharmacy, that's really more the dollar figure that they're talking about here. So that's without discount, full retail price, $4,660. Now, what's nice is you'll get statements from Social Security that talks to you about what your usage is, but normally it's 2 to 3 months behind where you're actually at in your usage, right? So it's hard to give you a great estimate of what your usage looks like until we go into some kind of portal or system to look at actual cost, right? But to make things simple, you'll be in this initial stage where you're really only paying deductibles for brand name drugs or specialty drugs. Otherwise, you just have set copays until you have drugs that cost $4,660. Okay. Once you get to that part where you have enough drugs that cost that much, then you're going to go into the donut hole or the coverage gap. Have you heard that phrase before, the donut hole?
Yeah, I've heard it from from a friend of mine. Yeah.
Gotcha. So what a donut hole is it's basically the gap, right? It's where Medicare says, okay, insurance company, you have to pull back your coverage from your client. So what happens there is you don't have the regular copay structure anymore. What you're doing is you're sharing the cost of your medication with the manufacturer of the drug. Okay, so let's say that Johnson and Johnson is the manufacturer of the drugs that you take, and when you go to the pharmacy, if you have $1,000 drug that you have to pick up, you're going to pay a percentage of that drug, and the manufacturer is going to pay the percentage of the drug for 100% total. Okay. The drug company that you go into most likely is not paying anything unless they specifically have a plan that identifies a drug in the coverage gap. Okay. But as a whole, the coverage gap, it's pretty much all between you and the manufacturer of the drug. Okay. Now, here's where math gets really complicated, because the way to get out of the coverage gap takes some dollar amounts, right? So if we go back to your initial stage, anything you've paid as a deductible or a co-insurance will be a starting point to get out of the coverage gap. So let's say that you paid a $500 deductible and you've paid $400 in copays, right? That's $900. That is your starting point to get out of your coverage gap. Okay. Now, any dollar amounts that you pay in the coverage gap and whatever the manufacturer pays, so basically 100% of the drug going from that 900 forward until you reach 7,400, it will keep you inside of that coverage gap. But once you and the drug company and what you've paid from from tier one or the initial coverage stage, once that total reaches 7,400, then you'll come out of the coverage gap. Okay. And you go into the catastrophic stage. Now, in the catastrophic stage, Medicare realizes that you have probably spent very high dollar amounts to get your medicines, right? Because you're paying a percentage of what your medicine is, like 20, 25%, something close to there. And now they're going to give you some relief. So in the catastrophic stage, you'll have a set amount that you pay for generics that will be based off of what your original copay structure was, right? So if you went into a plan that didn't charge you for generics, you wouldn't pay for generics. But if they had a charge of like $10 for generics, what happens is in the catastrophic stage, your maximum amount could be what you had been in copays, but it won't be any more than $4.10. So what's going to happen is Social Security is going to give you some relief in there. So your max coverage cost for generics would be $410. Brand names would be $1035. And then if you took any specialty drugs, let's say like liquid radiation or something like that, you'd only pay 5% of those drugs versus like 20 or 30%, right? So down below, what I've done here is I've kind of given you an idea of what the different tier groups would look like. And these are estimates, right? You have tiers 1 and 2, which will be generic drugs, right? A tier 1 will be a preferred generic. You're going to pay very little for those. Most of those have no cost, but it could be as high as $10. Tier 2, now these are still generics, but they're not preferred generics. So again, you'll have very little cost. Most of these will not be free, but they won't be very expensive either. Usually I find those in the $8 to $10 range. Tier 3 and Tier 4 are brand name drugs. Now, these are generally drugs that do not have a generic equivalent, or if they do, you would not be able to take them. So Tier 3s and Tier 4s are going to be a little bit more expensive. And if there is an alternate on the generic side, it's going to be recommended that you go to those so you can save money. And then tier 5 is going to be specialty drugs. These are things that not many people take, but in general, you're spending 25% of whatever it retails at every time you pick it up. Now, some plans will have a tier 6. A tier 6 will be a group of drugs. Let's say they may be, let's say diabetic medicines, right? Insulins and things like that. That generally would be on a tier 3, right? Brand name drugs. They might have a special tier, a tier 6, that takes the tier 3 drugs for that group of medicine and puts it into tier 2 cost for you. Okay. And I've also seen where a couple plans will take tier 1 and 2 and combine it together. They might have all their specialties in a tier 6 and not worry about another tier. So there's a lot of different ways that companies do it, but in general, drug coverage it can be complicated, but I'll put it this way. You have an initial stage where you'll pay co-pays that are something similar to what I have here on the bottom. Once you have spent $4,660, not out of your pocket, but in total, then you'll go into the coverage gap. You'll be in that gap until between you and the manufacturer for the year you've spent $7,400, and then you'll go into the catastrophic stage where your cost will be limited for the rest of the year. Does that make sense, Roberto?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, so I know it can get complicated. We can get into a real big rabbit hole there, but overall, that's how Medicare drug coverage is mandated to work by Medicare. So I know we kind of went through quite a bit of stuff here, but what I have done here for you so far is in these 4 pages, I've taken that Medicare and You book, that 100 and some odd pages, and I've kind of condensed it down into about 30 minutes for you. And really what I've done is told you what your total options are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So for the sake of training, we're going to take a pause, right? We're going to open it up for questions, because what I've done is I've set the stage so far for me and Roberto to talk about, I've got his doctors, I've got his cost. I'm going to start making recommendations and start getting into Sunfire. But this is all the way up to this point. I don't need a scope of appointment. I have done educational stuff with Roberto. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
At this point, what I want to do is I want to move forward with him and say, okay, look, this is plans I recommend, this is different options, et cetera, et cetera. But before we do that, what questions do you guys have about pages 1 through 4 and how I did any of the stuff that I did with Roberto in this example?
So when you go through, I'm sorry, this is Arlinda.
Mhm.
So when you're going through their medicines and everything, and then we've told them about the catastrophic phase, right?
Okay.
What if we run into a specialty drug? How does that work again? Can you remind me?
Are you talking about cost or?
Cost.
Okay.
Say,
Sure.
I can't think of one offhand right now.
Sure. Liquid radiation is always
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, chemo also.
Chemo, okay.
Mhm.
So that's like the 5% of what they would be making.
Right.
Am I correct?
Right. So, and like I will normally say, I highly recommend printing out all 4 of these pages. You might want to create your own, because right now I have these in PDF. But
Okay.
you might want to create your own so that you can go in and modify things. So even like my page 1 needs to be updated. The Part B cost is not updated. Your deductible there is not updated. But things on here, right? So like the 410, 1035, I'd have to double check those to see if those are 2023 numbers. Pretty sure they are. But these numbers change slightly every year. So
Right.
you guys take and download these these forms, you'll have it. Now, I recommend you giving this set of forms to everybody that you work with, right?
Oh.
I do a lot of my appointments face to face. I don't like telesales personally. So everybody that I work with, I do 4 pages, and then I give them either a handwritten copy or a printed out copy of what we've done. So you can follow that example, or you can just try to explain it. But so the problem is this, right? So I'm talking to who? What's your name? I'm sorry.
Arlinda, I'm sorry. Arlinda Coleman.
Okay, so Arlinda.
That, sir, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. So now that we've gone through that, and I'm sure you were listening from everything else, I'll give an example of why you need to do that with these pages, right? So what dollar figure did I say what an average HMO specialist visit would be?
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Exactly. You see my point? Now, the reason that I tell you to give these pages to the client is you just listened, and you're listening because you need to learn it. They're half listening because they want to understand, but they just kind of want to get through the appointment. They've already forgotten this, right? So if you give them that page and you give them some examples, and they get, especially to when it's page 2 and 3 here, it makes sense for them why they did it, but it will save you as the agent a ton of phone calls going forward.
Okay. So
Okay.
I did step away for 2 minutes to go get me something to drink. I did not hear where we can download these at. Did I miss it?
No, I didn't say that yet, but they are available inside of the LBA channel. So, okay, what's going on, computer?
All right, I'm gonna have to jump out of the call.
Okay, no worries.
But yeah, I've got everything. I'm gonna email you so you can send me those 4 pages, and then I'll tweak it.
Awesome. I'm going to, and Roberto, thank you for being my
Thank you
guest
again.
today.
No, thank
Appreciate
you.
the client.
All right.
All right, have a good one.
Take care. Have a good one.
Okay, so we've got, where'd you go? We've got pages 1 through 4 that are listed up on the Better site, but for those of you who need it right now,
Yes, sir.
what I can do is I can reply back to your original invite, and hopefully I have everybody on that email string with those 4 pages, right? That would make it easy for now. But going forward, because I know we're recruiting people, we're building our teams, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to be difficult to continue to share down that pipeline, right? So we do have it inside of the Better Network. We're still in the process of moving things around. So for now, if you need it, it'll be in that email string. So everybody attending today will have it. Outside of that, you can always reach out to me if you have specific needs for things like that. Okay.
I just sent you my email.
I
Just
see
in
you.
case you don't have it. Okay, I'm gonna be quiet now, but I was like, I must have missed something. So where I can get the 4. Okay.
Yeah, you're doing good. This is why we're having this training right here.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Okay. What other questions do we have on pages 1 through 4?
Good morning, everybody. This is Elaine. I'm
Elaine?
new. Hi. I'm still waiting on my contracting, but I was invited, so thank you. I'm 100% telesales agent where I've never done a Zoom or over the phone. I've done face-to-face in my past, but telesales is totally different than face-to-face. Is there a telesales presentation to what you were trying to teach us just now?
So what I do when I do telesales is I do a combination of a script that you have to have, because with the telesales, there's a lot of things that you have to read verbatim, right? That script is available. So those of you that are contracted and ready to sell, you can't get the script until you're those two things, but
Okay,
there is a telesales script that's available that helps you know what you have to say specifically, and also what areas you can kind of say your own verbiage, right? So yes, there is a script out there. You have to kind of use what Medicare tells you specifically in some areas, and then you can veer away from that in others. So when you have those open areas, you can start talking about their specific situations. You can give them a bigger overall view of Medicare. So it's a combination of what I told you today and the telesales. But what I would recommend is go through the telesales script first, which you can get through Shane or your upline or me, but you can't get it until you are 100% certified and ready to sell.
right. Yeah, I was just wondering because, you know, the way you presented this today was more or less like a face-to-face or a Zoom type telesales. And anything I've ever done is not, we tried it off with Zoom in the beginning, and that's like a nightmare with the clients, trying to get them on a Zoom call. So I learned how to do totally over the phone, you know, this exact type of presentation. But the way you were presenting today, I was trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do that on the phone? You know, educate, because I wouldn't mind educating, because you know it is complicated. Medicare makes it so crazy, and
So
you
here's a
know,
suggestion for you. Even in the telesales, we're getting their email address, right?
uh-huh,
So you can always send them pages 1 through 4,
okay,
right?
yeah, I
And
was
if
thinking
you
that,
have pages 1 through 4 on the side, whether they're looking at it at that moment or not,
Hello.
you can go ahead and do your presentation,
right,
let them know that they have pages 1 through 4 coming in an email, and they can always review it after you guys have finished your presentation for the day.
right,
Right.
yeah, I have no problem following up with that, going, you know, line by line if I need to do that,
Right.
you know, because it is a good way of keeping, you know, your clients, having them marry you in a way, because if you're explaining stuff to them, they feel
Mhm.
like, oh, you're looking out for me. I didn't know that before. Now I
Right.
know about tier 5 or whatever.
Right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Do we have another question there?
Yes, this is Lucian. I'm start being upset because my contracting request was submitted January 31st, and nothing moved forward. No email from carriers. Only I can see that it's confirmed it was submitted.
So you have worked with Shane, correct?
With Ryan, but I believe it's Shane that's supposed to help me.
Okay. So Shane has sent you in through the portal, right?
Yes,
To contract with carriers. And you've gone through all that portal where you put your agent information, your license information, you set up your bank account information, all that stuff, correct?
everything.
Okay. Well, sec. How do you spell your first name?
And the 4 pages, I remember on Tuesday you say to us that we should find them at the Sunfire portal
No,
with
not
the
Sunfire.
script.
not Sunfire. It's inside of the LBA portal.
LBA, not even Accelerator.
No, so Agent Accelerator is Agent Accelerator, Sunfire, all that stuff that you go through Agent Accelerator to log into, that is all owned by Network Insurance. There are upline to Medicare, right? They are not part of LBA. So Sunfire, LBA, sorry, Sunfire, the your FMO training site, all that stuff is outside of LBA. Everything that we do is inside of the LBA channel, right? We've got, well, we had the powered agency that has converted over to the LBA side of a Better Life under the network channel. And inside of Better Life, all of our training's kind of been merged in with everybody else right now. But if you want to go searching through, there's Zoom calls like what I've done here today on several different objects. I also just recently got some stuff from Glenn on some of our previous stuff that I recorded. So I'm going to try to sift through that and make it so it's easy to find what you want. But to answer your question, no, Sunfire is not the platform to get that stuff from. I do everything through the LBA side of things. So whether that's through abetterlife.com underneath the LBA channel. So let me open that up so you guys understand what I'm saying.
Yes, but when will we have some training for that?
Well, there's a
To
bunch of
show
training that you
us,
can get into right now. So you can get into yourfmo.com and there is a ton of training that you can jump into today, right? A ton of training. I promise you won't get bored. You could probably jump in there and work for about 4 or 5 days straight, 24 hours a day, and you wouldn't even complete all of it. So there's a ton of training in there, right? If you want my specific training, either you have to sign up for something like what we did today through your upline, or you go through and look through my old Zooms, or you do every 2 weeks with me, right? That's kind of the only thing that I do outside of that. Now I will be building a library, but because we're having a few challenges with trying to get everything in one place, I have held off on building a library. But that doesn't mean there's not training out there. The Your FMO site has a ton of stuff for you guys to start looking at right
that's
now.
why I'm
So if you're,
surprised because I'm supposed to be connected to Legacy Benefits Alliance, LBE.
Mhm.
And underneath LBA, there is my upline using Sunfire platform at Accelerator.
Okay, so okay, so Sunfire is a quoting platform. Okay, that's what Sunfire does. So just like this page that I'm sharing right now, this is a platform for communication. Sunfire is a platform that does a lot of different things, but main focus of Sunfire is to quote and enroll.
Yes,
The
basically,
Agent
but you
Accelerator,
find all the screening questionnaire and all the scripts.
I'm sorry, what?
You find the script to communicate with the caller.
You can go through there, you can dig around in there and find the script. You could actually just email Shane. Shane has a version of it. But again, you're not going to have access to that until you're able to sell, basically, right? So here's a very easy way to do things, right? And because we have multiple people on the training today, I don't want to get bogged down into little bitty what I call microchasms of where an individual may be, right? If you have an issue moving forward one way or another, you should have a direct contact to somebody that you can talk to. That's your upline, that's Shane, that's Mary, and we also have a third person that's coming into the mix that would be a liaison between network insurance and LBA, right? But let's say you have an issue with contracting. You got to call Shane. I can't do anything for you. Your upline can't do anything for you. Shane has to push that through. Now, I would also go ahead and say, send an email to Shane and copy your upline so there can be pressure put on Shane. But there are specific people who can fix specific things, right?
Okay.
Just like on these websites, there are certain websites to do specific things. So Agent Accelerator, it's specifically built to contract. This site that I'm sharing right here, this is a better network. Inside of that, if you look to where my screen is moving around here, right? Inside of here, there's the channels. The legacy benefit channel is where I post anything that I've done. Now we're missing a few things, like I said, because of conversion. So we're trying to make sure that this stuff comes back. But here's a version of page 1 by itself right here. You've got other chats that I put in here. You've got old trainings. You've got invites for trainings. All this stuff is in this LBA website here, right? So this is where I will post everything else. Now, this is where most of the content will not be, unfortunately, because there's not enough room in this website for me to load all the documents and all the things that I create for you guys. But if you're looking for a specific training that's passed, or if you're looking for any communication that I send out, it'll be right here in this LBA channel of a better network. Okay. Now, another great website for you guys to go while you're still either in the transition stage while contracting or anything like that, you can go to yourfmo.com, right? You probably are going to this page regardless, because you have to go and do your certifications. And this page has your links to your certifications, right? You can click right here and do any of your certifications. You've got all kinds of training in here though. So you can go into FMO training. I promise you, go in there and you get bored, you could spend hours on hours getting trade up in there. Okay. If you need your AHIP, which you have to do every year, quick link to do that as well. There's also, and I highly recommend you guys play around inside of this. There's marketing tools inside of there as well. So I guess what I'm saying is you've got access to a lot of things until you get to a ready to sell state. And then you guys can just work with me on an individual state, right? So I would say this: there has never been an agent that has reached out to me, right? And I put my information out there. Matter of fact, here's my mobile number.
Can we have a path for the agent training clearly defined? Step 1, step 2, this page, that page. Because now I'm between Accelerator and yourfmo.com.
So you're asking what exactly?
To define a step-by-step training path. Where to go to look
Like,
at
is
which
there a
video.
direct pathway to, like, a step-by-step of what you should do next? There is none, because I don't recommend you do that. I recommend that you do multiple trainings, right? Even pages 1 through 4. It might be nice to do pages 1 through 4 in order, but you don't have to. You could have started with page 2 and 3, and then gone back to page 1, right? There is no set order of building on learning here. Medicare is a big process of how it works, and you're going to have to take it in bite-sized pieces, right? So there is no, you should do this training first, you do that training first. The only thing that you should do first is a combination of AHIP and your carrier certifications. Outside of that, you just need to jump into wherever you're at with training on the 2-week calls and go back and look at the Zoom calls that have been recorded. Outside of that, there is no straight path on you should start here and finish here. Medicare is not built that way.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay. What other questions do we have on pages 1 through 4, guys?
Do you have Shane phone number?
Give me a second. There's Shane's information right there. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We are an hour and 15 minutes in. Let's set this call for about an hour and 30. So I think pages 1 through 4, if they're done right, or if you get to the point where you can memorize page 1 through 4, that does a couple things for you. So it doesn't matter if you're doing telesales or if you're doing in-home presentations, face-to-face, or if you're just doing a presentation as an event, right? The concepts behind pages 1 through 4 is really what you need to understand. So it's not necessarily doing pages 1 through 4 as a robotic system, as it is important to take the information from pages 1 through 4 and understand why we're doing it that way, right? Why do I break down a prepaid path with Medicare supplements and drug coverage and help them understand that they're spending that money up front versus Medicare Advantage, where I'm taking all my coverage and letting a private insurance company manage that coverage now. And in doing so, I only pay for the services that I have done. Okay.
Yes.
The next level inside of that is understanding how an HMO or PPO works, right? Am I in a network-based plan? Am I in a plan that's network-based, but I can go outside of, or, how does my coverage work? Do I have to see certain doctors? Do I have freedom? Those are important things that you need to be able to explain to your patient, right? Or your client. And then finally, what's my overall cost going to look like? So that's what pages 2 and 3 do. They give you a kind of an in-depth idea of what that client should expect hypothetically for the next year if they went down any of those 3 pathways. If they went through HMO, PPO, or Medicare supplement, these numbers are never going to be 100% accurate, because you cannot foretell what their coverage is going to look like. But what you can do is say, well, you know what, based on what either your usage is or the average person, this is where you'll end up in a regular year. But what page 2 will help you do is identify who their doctors are, which is what you need when you get to working inside of Sunfire, and if they're taking any medications and how often they see those doctors, right? When you get into Sunfire, you're going to need the names of the doctors, and you're going to need their medications, so you can go ahead and look at lowest cost plan that their doctors work with. Okay. Now, page 4, you can use it or not, totally up to you. I find sometimes it's more confusing to use it than to not, but it is important to explain the drug coverage to have a fully compliant presentation with your customer. So if you do not do page 4 within the 4 pages, you have to make sure that when you're going through the benefits with the client, that you talk about how Medicare coverage works. So page 4 is either you do it right now or you do it later. Okay, where the rest of pages 1, 2, and 3, it's just better to do it up front. But inside of these 4 pages, what I've tried to do to make it easier for you guys is you can do all 4 pages without having to have a scope of appointment, right? There is no plan specific information inside of any of those 4 pages. So you can do that, all of that. You can educate your client and get them on the same page and get information from them before a scope of appointment. Now that's only important because by the time you've gotten all this and you've kind of thought about where you want to put them as far as a plan, now you only have to do 1 scope of appointment. You can say, well, based on that, I think Humana or United or Aetna or whoever might be the right plan for you. I'd like to show you their plan. Would you mind signing the scope of appointment? Right? And then you only have to do 1. You go through either the Sunfire, you break a book open, however you do in your appointment, and then you've only had to do that 1 time versus showing 14 different plans and having to have 14 different scope of appointments, right? So with that, pages 1 through 4 kind of sets the stage for you guys to get into the quoting tool. So now if you've done a good job of pages 1 through 4, and I mentioned this when I finished with Roberto before he had to jump off the line, now would be the time where I jump into Sunfire and start looking at plan specifics, right? I've got the information I need. I got their doctors, their usage. I'm going to need their zip code, which I probably already know. But now I get into Sunfire and I start doing quoting, right? Now, I am not the quoting tool expert, right? That is Matt. He works for Network Insurance. He has a training. I believe it's well, it'll be in the communication that I push out, right? But he is taking over the training in just a couple of weeks. So it'll be him specifically talking about Sunfire and how to do the enrollments. Now, we also, inside of that LBA channel, inside the Better Network, have a Sunfire training already posted. So if you are at the point where you
Where? Can you show
understand,
us, please?
I will in just a minute. If you are at the point where you have already certified, you are ready to sell status with multiple carriers, you understand pages 1 through 4, then you're ready to go to Sunfire. I would discourage anybody from going right to Sunfire. You probably will understand the quoting tool if you did it that way, and you might even be able to make some sales if you
Yes.
skip going through pages 1 through 4. However, you're putting yourself at a lot of risk because if you don't
Certainly.
do a compliant presentation and you get secret shopped, they can mess your world up a little bit, right? So I know that most of you guys are either new or newer. You've got some veterans in your team, but I will caution you not just to go directly into sales, right? Understand what you're doing, because if you catch the wrong one, if you get a couple of different complaints, you do a CMS evaluation the wrong way, they can take away your access to a carrier for the year
Yes,
or even
yes.
indefinitely, right? So,
So thanks God, I already did all the carrier certification for 2023.
mhm. So like I said, once you're certified and you understand it, pages 1 through 4, go into the Sunfire training, which is done. I believe he's doing it every quarter right now as in a general, but inside of the same website that I just showed you guys, right? Where was I? Sorry guys, I've got way too many things open here. Okay, so inside of the Better Network, inside of Legacy Benefit Alliance, once you're inside of this site where it says LBA, inside of Network, A Better Life, just start scrolling down. All the different trainings that we had will be in here. Okay.
Okay.
You might have to hit the more button, show more and all that stuff. Like there's page 1 Medicare. There's stuff that you can pull down from here pretty much at any given time. So if you cannot find it from there, that's where you either call me. Oh, am I sharing my screen? I might not be able to see that. Sorry. Sitting there talking to myself. Apologize, guys. Oop, oop. Screen. Yeah. Okay. So inside of LBA, so we're inside of a Better Network or network.abetterlife.com. Inside of where it says channels here, where it says legacy benefit, that's where I'm at right now, right? Inside of that post, inside of that feed, you see that there's just all kinds of stuff here, right? Search through that, guys. That's where you're going to find previous trainings. Sometimes I put forms there. If you need anything, that's your first look, right? That's where you're going to find the majority of these trainings. Now, in just a couple of days, I plan on posting some of the previous trainings. So for example, there's a training from October 5th that goes over the Sunfire stuff. I will probably post a version of that inside of the chat there to give you guys some Sunfire training. But I will say this, if you guys need anything specifically, you can always reach out to myself or to Shane or your upline, and we can get it for you. Here's where it gets difficult. If you just say I need training, guys, there's training everywhere. There's your FMO, there's the stuff I've done previously. There's all kinds of stuff for you. We need to know what you want specifically, right? So Ms. Leroy, you asked specifically for the Sunfire, right? I'll make sure that that's one of the first things I post back into the LBA channel for you guys to have access to, right?
Yes.
So look for that no later than Monday. You'll see a link for
Thank
Sunfire
you.
training. Okay.
Thank you very much.
But
Have a
you're
good
welcome.
weekend.
But there's a lot of stuff for us to know. So what I need to know is what you guys need, where your gaps are, and I will do my best to try to fill that. And the training schedules that I build, I try to build based on what I feel like the overall group needs, right? So as you guys look at the schedule, if there's things that are in there or not in there that you need, feel free to reach out to your upline and tell them that you need these specific areas of training. Okay. So with that, guys, if there's more questions, I'll leave it open for another few minutes. If you guys have anything specifically on what we talked about today, or how to make that transition into Sunfire, we can talk about that. Otherwise, I think it probably will be a wrap up for today.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. No more questions, comments? Okay, well, then I'm going to send an email out with pages 1 through 4 to everybody who I initially invited. And then also by Monday, you guys will see a link to the previous Sunfire training. And then there'll be another one in like 2 or 3 weeks. So anything outside of that, if you need anything, reach out to myself, reach out to your upline, and we'll get you taken care of. Okay. Thanks, guys, for joining. Hope you have a great time and get out there selling some stuff.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.